Hello and welcome to the D
and A of Home Interiors, the podcast which is all about empowering you to make confident interior and furnishing decisions for your home. I'm Audrey, founder of Audrey and Interior Design.
And I'm Deirdre, founder of youfurnish.com, such 100 plus furniture retailers on one website. The DNA of Home Interiors is proudly sponsored by checkatrade.com. If you need help with your next home improvement project, you can search from over 39,000 recommended, vetted and monitored trades on checkatrade.com. Audrey, I'm really excited about this topic. It's moving home and everything related to moving home. Now, you're the guinea pig because you've recently moved home, and it's really interesting because although it's 4 years ago for me, I can still remember quite a lot of it. So I think this is going to be a really interesting topic. Is it too raw? Have you managed to settle in yet, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's very raw or fresh, if you like. It might be a better way for me to describe it. But we're really, really settling in, but it still looks like a house that somebody has just moved into,
Moved into.
Yeah.
Have you ever met somebody who likes moving home?
Yeah, I feel I have. Like, in fact, I'm so delighted now that we've moved. Like, I'm like absolutely relishing this new home. But I think, what hinders so many people is like in advance, particularly if it's not like you're forced, like a landlord says, I'm going to sell the house or whatever. And, you have no option. I mean, that's difficult, but at the end of the day, it's not your decision. Somebody else is forcing it. So I was going to say, just particularly, I suppose, when nobody is forcing you and it is a decision that you make, and maybe it is a difficult decision. And in our case, it was certainly a difficult decision because we absolutely loved our home before, we loved our house, but we made the decision that we were going to move from London back to Dublin, where we're from. So obviously I kept saying if we could take our house with us, we would. So it wasn't the house, it was obviously other reasons. So I think, that fear then of maybe, giving up a house you love. And I'm sure lots of people fall into that category when they move for other reasons. And it can also be because you do need more space, but you feel, oh, maybe we can just about make do, or maybe we can extend. But if there's a few things that, your life can be improved by, then you sort of know deep down that you're better, moving on. So I think that's the pain maybe to do with moving, that, it's the insecurity and it's the fear. But then I've met a lot of people who, despite that, when they arrive at their new destination, they're just so delighted that they kind of plucked up the courage and they went with it and went through it. And, that they've sort of landed on their feet eventually.
Because it's regularly cited as one of the most stressful things that you can do, moving home.
Yeah.
Now, I have met people who the idea of it's so exciting because you're starting with a blank slate. And we all have these great intentions. And nearly 100% of people that I've spoken to have all the intentions that before I move, I'm going to go through all of my stuff in the existing property. And I'm only going to bring what I want to keep to the new place. And fast forward, you run out of time, everything gets a bit chaotic. So you've got to pack everything into boxes and you say, I'll deal with it when I get to the new home. And then I'll go through all the stuff and, I'll only keep what I need. And lo and behold, you get to the new home and there's lots of boxes and you're sort of trying to just, unpack them, and you end up with all of your stuff transferred into a new home and you've never had the opportunity to go through it. I think that's been universal in terms of nearly everybody that I've spoken to. So all these good intentions don't actually come to fruition in terms of our ability to organize ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're one of our listeners and you have done that, please get in touch and let us know, because I'd be fascinating to know who's organized enough to do that.
Yeah, we want to know the secrets, because I think there's so many other kind of tasks involved in moving that, you sort of, you do think in advance you'll have this time and kind of energy somehow to go through all of that in advance. But the reality is, all the other jobs that need to be done around moving, and, whether it's kind of sorting out new schools or, all your sort of address changes, and, if you've I don't know. I mean, in our case, we had businesses registered at home as well. So, just so much admin. And actually, they're the things that you think life can't go on without this done. But actually, life can go on with a few extra boxes of stuff. So, yeah, that becomes the reality.
Indeed, indeed. So moving home, it might not necessarily mean that you have all of your furniture that you want to take with you. Maybe you're starting as a first-time buyer, so maybe you're purchasing furniture for the first time. There is many lists out there, Audrey, in terms of 5 weeks before the move, 3 weeks before the move, 2 weeks before the move, trying to get you organized and around, addresses and various the admin, which we won't really go into on this podcast. But what I did want to ask about is when we're looking at furniture, how would you recommend doing that? And I am going to share with you how I did it. So I moved into an apartment with a blow-up mattress, and I slept on that blow-up mattress for about 2 months because I was very disorganized and I didn't realize how long it took to actually order furniture. Now, my move-in date was delayed. So if I'd ordered the furniture to all arrive on the move-in date, I probably wouldn't have been able to take the furniture. So when is the right time to actually order furniture? So hopefully you're not sleeping on a blow-up mattress for 2 months as I was, but I do feel like I brought that slightly on myself.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? But I mean, I think, ideally, I know we've always kind of really wanted a gap between exchanging contracts if you're buying somewhere and the completion date. So then you have the security of knowing that, you should be moving in on a particular date. So in theory, then, you could order some furniture items as long as they're due to arrive on or after that date. I think, probably the downside to that, although it sounds, terribly efficient, is that, you may have only been in that property for, 15 minutes, or if you're lucky, probably, especially in COVID times, I know people who've moved and, they've spent so little time in there. Often for viewings, only 2 people were allowed. So maybe your children have never seen the house. That was the case for us. So there is a certain sense of just wanting to kind of maybe get in there and reassess a few things, even if it does mean sleeping on an airbed or not having a sofa for a while. So I think, I definitely, even though I, plan all my layouts out on SketchUp and I'm constantly sourcing furniture and everything, I still lean towards having that bit of time, getting in and just, double checking some stuff. So, and it's not just kind of double checking in terms of technical, say, dimensions or whatever. It's also, I think, just seeing how you use the space, so like for just to give you one example, like in this house we moved into, there's a room off the hall that we thought, that would be perfect playroom, loads of room for kind of storage units and stuff for toys and lots of floor space, to play. But actually there's a conservatory off the kitchen. And particularly because we've moved in November where we don't have loads of daylight, it's actually incredible to have that daylight, for those few short hours a day, which like we've never had anything like that before. And straight away when we came in, it was like the kids just wanted to play out there. And I think that's just real human nature, isn't it? Like you are drawn towards the light. So like the playroom then is like not quite as big a thing as we thought it would be. So now we're kind of reevaluating, is that where we want to put everything, So I think it's so interesting to just see kind of where you gravitate and how you want to use that space, which is really, really difficult to tell exactly, before you actually get in there.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. And I was so excited when I was moving, and in my head during that period of you put an offer on a place and then it's 3 months until you finally get the keys, I think I had expanded the floor space by about double. I was like, this is where my sofa is going to go in, and then I'm going to have a side table, and then there's going to be a bit of a gap, and then there'll be a console table, and then there might be a gap, and then there was going to be a bookcase. And in reality, what I've ended up with on that wall is just the sofa. And actually, there wouldn't have been room for all of that furniture, or it would have been the most cluttered room ever. So I do believe now, and I wouldn't have agreed with it at the beginning, that actually living in a space and realizing how you're going to use it and keeping it simple in terms of not over cluttering with furniture as well, I think is the key lesson that I learned. Now, obviously completely by accident, not by choice, but I'm really grateful that I had that time living there. And it's tough because you're trying to balance it out against, but I want it all done. I want it all finished. I want to be able to invite guests over and show them it, but I don't want to invite them into a room if there's just a sofa, because that's not showing off my full design and how I've created this look for my home. So you're trying to find the balance, but actually you'll be in the home hopefully for quite a long period of time. So a little bit of short-term pain for that long-term gain is well worth enduring, will be my piece of advice. And as I said, it was a piece of advice I heard before I had moved. I would have ignored it and gone ahead, but due to circumstances, I wasn't able to. And I'm really glad.
Yeah. And like the other thing to remember is, you don't need to kind of buy everything in one go. So it's also quite good to, get some of the more essential pieces and then, continue to see how you use the rest of the space. But I'm not, I don't have any sense of urgency around kind of needing to like get those boxes of books unpacked, just like throw in any old bookcase. It's funny because the one thing that we're completely lacking in this house is the fact that, basically we don't have one single bookshelf because like I often refer to, in Victorian properties, particularly in London, so many people have the chimney breasts and the alcoves. And so that was our house all over in London. We had so many alcove shelves and cabinets. So all our books were taken care of on them. But then when we moved, obviously, they've stayed in the old house. So that's a whole new kind of aspect of furniture that needs to be worked out. But I'm a real believer in get the right kind of long-term solution and one that you'd be happy with and not kind of just get the thing that's available right now,
Indeed.
Quick shout out for our sponsor, checkatrade.com. Search recommended tradespeople online with checkatrade.com.
So we're moving home. What are the key initial pieces that we need, or what are the pieces that we should prioritize? A bed is always a good place to start, and a sofa and a dining table. Is that enough, Audrey? What else do we need?
I'd say, they're really good starting points. I think, if you're living in an empty house, so we actually did that here for a week before we managed to get our furniture in. We slept on air beds and we actually had no heating either because we had issues getting the gas connected. And I have to say, the combination of no heat, so if you're in that situation, the difference it makes having a bed rather than not having a bed, even with no heat, is massive. And I think as well, we were actually really lucky because the previous people left a few things here, which at first we were a bit horrified about, but then we realised, they left a sofa. So actually that came in really handy. But again, on a sofa versus sitting on the floor, especially if a place is chilly and it's winter, is hugely helpful as well. And it's so nice to have something to eat off. We actually had a camping table, so just very simple way of being able to, sit at a table with some garden chairs. So a bit makeshift, but the functionality of those three things, I think, is good. And then it's all your extras then, like your storage and your kind of side tables, and then things like rugs, obviously pictures on the wall, the things that kind of make a place feel so sparse and bare. And then once you get those items in and some lamps as well, it really does make a difference.
So there's one other tip that I've got, and when I moved, it was summertime, so it was lovely and warm. I didn't have the cold issue, thankfully. But I didn't have any blinds.
Yeah.
And I was awake at 5 a.m. because I
Wow.
also didn't have Wi-Fi, so I was going to bed pretty early because I couldn't watch anything. And the power of blinds actually to block out the light and make sure that you can sleep was something I completely underestimated. So I was very efficient with work for a couple of weeks there where I was like, I'm awake, I'll get up. And I think I was in the office for like 6 or 7 a.m.
Yeah.
for a week or two. But it's one of those things that you don't think about for window coverings.
Yeah, that can be a real problem. Yeah. And also, like for most windows, you probably do need to get blinds made to order, in a specific size. So like you can get lucky, say, sometimes in IKEA, being able to buy some blinds in the right size. But, you would have had to have enough time to go into the property and properly measure those windows, which a lot of people either, don't have that access or don't have the kind of foresight to think. But yeah, if you do have the access, and particularly between exchanging contracts and completion on a property that you're purchasing, like we talked about, that is that time where you could place some orders. And if it was possible to get into the property, I think that would be a really useful thing to do, to be able to get some measurements for things like that you might be able to get. But otherwise, my total hack, which was mainly invented by me to keep babies asleep longer, is to just go to like a fabric shop or order online, get some blackout lining. So the lining that's used in curtains, really cheap, just buy several meters of it, per window. And I used Velcro, so I sewed Velcro onto the back of it and then stuck Velcro. So you can get sticky backed Velcro, stick it onto the other onto the window pane, not the window frame if it's painted or varnished or anything, because you will rip the the finish off, but onto the window frame is safe enough. And it might be that you have a curtain pole or some kind of fitting that you could attach it to alternatively, but obviously the closer it is to the glass, the more effective it will be at blocking out that light.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think we did drape some sort of fabric over. There was a pole left and we were sort of roughly draping it over. But I love the double-sided Velcro idea and the lining, actually. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, the lining is a good one. Actually, just by accident years and years ago, when I made my own curtains for a rented flat I was living in, I discovered that denim is a great fabric for keeping light out. So I just made the denim curtains with no lining just because I wanted a quick fix with my sewing machine. And actually, denim's so cheap as well. So, that's also something you could consider. Use it for a throw on a kid's sofa afterwards or something like that.
Very creative, Audrey. I love it. So is there anything else that's fresh in your head, because you have recently just moved, around the furniture, maybe existing furniture that you're bringing in, or just by living in the space that you're considering around new furniture that you're going to need to purchase?
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose it's interesting what you were saying about the, like sort of not having time to sort things out beforehand, in terms of maybe reducing the amount of items and boxes that you have, because I'm trying really hard this end to actually do that. So even though it's making the unpacking process a bit longer, or let's say a lot longer probably, but really considering and sort of with the view to actually thinking, right, how much storage are we going to put in, but also how much do we actually want? So not sort of letting the belongings dictate how the house will be, but kind of the reverse, and saying, well, no, we haven't got space for all those extra whatever it is, so actually they're going to go to charity and we're not going to put another bookcase in or another sideboard in or something, because we want, that space free. So really trying to be considered in that way. I've been listening to the Minimalists podcast, which I'm finding really fascinating, really good kind of moral support when thinking in this way. So we'll see how far I get anyway.
Well, that's the thing I noticed about, when I was thinking of, I'll have this bookcase. And I think the more storage and the more places that you have, the more items that you accumulate.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying the fact, and even just for maintenance afterwards, around cleaning and dusting and having like very little sort of items that you need to move when you're doing the hoovering. That's something that I would actually bring into another house if I was to ever move, to say, I want to be able to clean it really easily.
Yeah.
And I don't want to have too many knickknacks around the place, because actually it's just going to increase the amount of work that I've got. So that's a big learning that I've actually taken as well.
Yeah.
So maybe practicing a little bit of minimalism.
Yes. No, I think there's a lot to be said for it, but it's amazing just, how it's almost like if it's not conscious thought, it can just almost happen of its own accord. And before you know it, you just have all these things, sitting around. I think actually one thing that has helped in that regard is, when we actually put our house on the market in London, in advance of putting it on the market, we put a lot of stuff into storage. So that kind of classic concept, I suppose, of home staging, or in our case, more to do with homeschooling, lockdown, just placing chaos. So it was like that sense of, well, what can we clear out? And the storage unit's only around the corner, so we can get it back if we need it. So we can be quite sort of rash in our decision making. But inevitably, as most people find, once you put the stuff in storage, you never look at it again. And so the only reason it's now in our house is because we moved and we left the country and we had to take it out of the unit. But it's only now that we're in our final destination after staying temporarily in between for 4 months and not opening any of those boxes that we're now faced with them all. But a lot of those things were the knickknacks, like 10 photo frames on a surface, 5 vases, whatever, and you just think, oh my gosh, let's just do a bit of a cull, reduce them down.
It's that moment when you find a box that you hadn't unpacked and you're like, oh, I wonder what's in here.
Yes,
I haven't missed it for 4 months or 12 months.
Yeah.
I probably don't need anything that's in here.
Yeah.
And then you open it up and go down memory lane.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, once you let it out, you can't you can't put it away again.
Indeed. So how would we summarize, Audrey? You've just moved. What would you summarize as the top key tips for people if they're about to move?
Well, I suppose I would say now with hindsight, don't stress if you do have to just throw things in boxes and you don't have that time, because I do think, like I said, it is such a stressful thing to do. I think as well, because so often moving is fueled with uncertainty, as in, you're not sure, you find a house and it's months later before you've got the guarantee of it all working out, or issues that might crop up, whether it's survey or financial things or whatever. And so that's all, really stress provoking. So I think, the stuff in the boxes is almost kind of like the easier bit, even though I know it's quite annoying. And it is within your control, and, you can deal with it at the other end. So I think that's good not to get too kind of, too concerned around that. And just taking it slow and just enjoying. I just feel like I'm allowing myself to just enjoy being somewhere new, and yet not feeling that pressure that it has to be all sorted, super quick. And it's really nice to be able to do some research, get some ideas together, and then kind of just see over the course of, probably a number of weeks, or it could be a bit longer for other people, just kind of, just playing out those ideas and making sure that they're the right ones.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And what I would say as well is just think about what do you initially need in the home, and do it bit by bit, because you don't need everything on day one. So if it's just starting with a bed and a blind, don't be afraid to say that's all I need right now, and that's sufficient until I get my feet in and walk around in the space.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Well, I hope that's been helpful for everybody, and we would love to hear from you if you do have any additional tips, if you have recently moved home or are moving home, and in particular, if you've managed to be organised to actually get through the organisation before you've packed up from your existing property. Do let us know. Love to hear from you.
If you enjoyed our podcast, we would be delighted if you could rate, review, and subscribe on your favourite podcast provider. This will help others who are seeking home and furnishing advice and inspiration discover the DNA of home interiors. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at the DNA of Home Interiors.
If you are looking for inspiration and help in designing your home interiors, take a look at Audrey Whelan's masterclasses on audreywhelan.com/events. And don't forget to check out youfurnish.com, a search and comparison website which helps connect people with amazing furniture from over 100 retailers. We designed it to solve the problem we and thousands like us faced furnishing our homes. And now we are really excited that everyone can search, discover, compare and shop for their home all in one place.
Thank you to our sponsor checkatrade.com for their support in bringing this episode to you. And most importantly, thank you all for listening today.
We hope you can join us next time.